Hello, everyone, and welcome back to today's episode of CondoLand. You might be able to hear it in my voice, but I actually had laryngitis over like the whole weekend, so I kind of have this like deep, raspy-ish kind of thing going on. So if I sound a little bit weird, that's why. If I sound better, then please let me know because I'll just like try to do this voice more often. Today's guest on the show is Edmund Leong. Edmund is the first auditor we've had on the show. He is the partner at Tator Rose and Leong. He's been auditing condominiums since 1991. For those new to the industry, that's before you were born. So he knows a lot of what he's talking about. So we thought it would be a fun idea to have an auditor on the show just to talk a little bit about, the condo industry from their perspective. What do they do? What do people think they do? And kind of hash out some of those things. So Edmund, thank you for coming on and welcome to the show.
Yeah, well, thank you as well. It's a pleasure to be on here. And unfortunately, if we were on video, you'd be able to see my gray hairs. But it's a good thing that we're vocal only.
Yeah, we do audio for a reason, and it's not the guest. It's usually me. Like this is the I don't you can see me right now. Everyone else can't, but this is the best I can look. So like we're sticking to audio, and that's a decision I think we made strategically, and we're gonna stick to that. So let's dive right in. So I know from my own experience, I do a lot of AGMs every year as the owner of a management company. I do probably 30 to 40 of these things a year. Most AGMs go fine, but the occasional AGM, especially sometimes in newer buildings you take over, you get some misconceptions, I would say, about what an auditor is supposed to be doing. Has that come up with you? Have you ever had owners kind of get it wrong and think your role is different than what it is?
Yeah, I think that happens actually more often than less. A lot of owners are not necessarily financially astute. A lot of them have different backgrounds, and whether it be law or perhaps even they're working on the lines or they're just not in the accounting profession. So I think the misconceptions happen a lot with respect to, hey, what's the auditor's role? Obviously we're here to do an audit of the financial statements and as well look at whether there's any misstatements with the audit. Uh, where it sort of goes offline is like, well, okay, well, hey, are you supposed to be hunting down for fraud? Is that your main role? Are you going to be looking for holes in the woods, and you're looking for misappropriations of funding? And I think that happens a lot because owners, uh, this is their biggest investment for many of them, and they're feeling, okay, you know what? Uh, is my money being properly handled? And they'll throw darts any which way to say, well, how are you are you guys handling my money correctly? So I guess I want to clear up that misconception. Auditors' main role is to do the audit and see if there's any misstatement with the financials. We're not those guys who wear the hat and have a little microscope in front of our eyes and try to sort of pin through all the financials and look for fraud. We
Yeah,
are
yeah.
supposed to be skeptical of it, but at the same time, that's not our main role. And there's certainly professionals that do that for a living. So just want to clear that up. That's not our main role, is to hunt down the fraud, but just to be skeptical of it.
Right. So your role really is just to make sure that the books sort of reflect what the bookkeeping says they did. The invoices that are in the books match to the bank. Is that's more or less what you're looking for? It's a financial audit, but it's not a what's it called? A forensic audit.
Correct, correct. I think the level of work that's required in forensics, it's got to be maybe 5 to 10 times more hours spent. You're really combing through with a fine-tooth comb. I've seen a report. It's hundreds of pages long. They look through checks, they look through signatures. They even, we're talking a micro level detail of a forensic audit. The financial audit that we do is typically we take a sample, and the sample is supposed to represent the population in terms of our substantive testing. So I think that to get a broader picture and to be able to get an opinion, that's the role of the general financial auditor that comes into the condominium.
So when you're at an AGM and the guy or girl stands up and says, "Hey, how like I have seen ones where they ask for fraud, but more common is just how's the board spending my money? Like are they doing a good job or are they doing a bad job? How do you answer that?"
Yeah, that's another misconception of the auditors that hey, we're supposed to give a fair weather report and
Yeah.
give our impressions of how things were run, whether it was run well or not well. Certainly there's we can give some sort of guidelines in terms of what the industry standards are, but to say that hey, you know what, that was good value for money in terms of what you spent it on, like I think it's up to the board if they feel like they want to spend $100,000 on a new front door for the condo. That's their call. And if they like that, then that's not for me to make the judgment call.
Fair
But
enough. Yeah, the owners might not, the management might have advised not to, but if it is their decision ultimately if they want to do it, I guess you're just checking that invoice matches what was paid, and that's
yeah,
again
exactly.
not
And
your
that
role to
those
comment
product.
on the quality of the board's decisions per se.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that we have to stay away from that kind of like quality judgment. Now, there are some areas that we reference to, like the engineer study in terms of the reserve fund balance. Say, you know what, that does that tie in close with the engineer studies cash flow table, and then of course, but to do a full analysis of it, that also requires a deep dive to where did they spend the money and where are they deferring things, or they did it early, or whatever the case is. Just to give a sort of a black and white approach is just like, okay, well, here's your reserve balance versus the engineer study.
Yeah, but I mean that can, like you said, that can vary substantially. Like if our engineering study didn't have the fact that the chiller broke down and you're out $1 million for a new chiller on a large building, that's perfectly reasonable. You need to replace it. The engineer made a mistake; it broke earlier than they thought it would, or whatever the case. So it's not
Yeah,
black and white. Oh, your study says this, and you're here. It's nuanced. So I guess, and I've seen this with you personally in AGMs where you do explain that to people. You say, well, it's not a yes, we're on target so we're good, or no, we're not on target so we're bad. It really depends on circumstance.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
guess one of my questions then is like, what happens? I got two actually. One is how do you deal with the owners in the AGMs that are accusing the board of fraud? I haven't seen this too often, but I'm sure you have in your career. And then I'll move to my second question after.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a heavy statement when someone actually comes up with darts like that. Those are heavy darts, and they really have to substantiate that. So, what I know is that these type of individuals who come in with that kind of mindset right to the HM, they're coming in hot. Like they're
Oh yeah,
angry already. They're speaking out of turn, not even like they're asking questions that in the auditors during the auditor section that should be in other matters. You know that they're ready to fight. I think that I've seen this happen way too many times. And what I usually let them do is I let them vent out a bit. If people will eventually run out of words to say after they have a preempted sort of speech, but let them have a little bit of time to sort of vent it out. And then you have to then have them pull in real facts. Can you
yeah,
please give us real facts about this? If it's in the right section of the AGM or whatnot. I think it's a matter of understanding the human nature of how to deal with different people and how they handle levels of hotness. Okay, so some some have to be
story of
slapped.
my life and the life of every manager. It's exactly what we're dealing with every day.
Actually, yeah, and I appreciate a manager's role in that respect. Like it's not an easy job, man. Like holy smokes, to have to deal with darts thrown at you all the time and how to understand human psyche, it's a psychologist's job in many ways when you're dealing with these hot-headed individuals. But again, having them have the space to vent it out, and
Yeah,
then many times what I find is like, okay, they slow down. It most often they slow down. They've just run out of material.
yeah, they
And if
burn
they're
through
not
their
hogging up the entire AGM, you let them speak, and then you start trying to talk to them, speak with them with some reason. If you try to speak with them with for some reason while they're hot, they're just going to debate right back. So you
yeah,
let them fizzle out. It's like a firecracker. Once it fizzles out near the back end, there's nothing left to blow up. Okay.
yeah,
So that's probably the best time to interject, I find, and say, okay, let's talk about facts. The room's listening. He or she's giving you the time to speak. And then you start introducing facts. And then you leverage on the side of reasoning. If you can get the captive audience to sort of side with sort of the manager or even the auditor in terms of the facts, then it sort of looks like, hey, you know what? Are you speaking reasonably with your argument or whatever the case may be? It may be a valid argument, but again, now the room's calmed down and we can talk about facts. And I think the facts go a long way when it comes to an argument. Reason will eventually set in. I think that's a key element. You have to get reasoning into this individual who's
Yeah.
very hot.
It brings up one story I had. This doesn't happen often. Like the people who are really hot-headed and accuse you of fraud or anything. That's pretty rare. At least I'm from the manager side. I mean, you go to AGMs every night, multiple AGMs. So this is probably you'd clearly see more of it than the average manager. But I did have one case, and it had to do. I don't want to get too technical on the podcast, but it was a large due from. So operating owed reserve or something like that. But it was a big amount. And it went back years and years before my company took over. It was a mess that was slowly being fixed. And so on the books, it had, this balance is really low because it owes the other fund. And someone went into the meeting thinking that the bank balance was like in overdraft, like we have no money, you've bankrupted us. And so the auditor was like, no, it's on the books. One account owes the other, and over time you'll pay it back, no problem. Like, you'll have surpluses over the years and you'll chip away at it, no problem. And he came in just like you said, very like a firecracker, just explosive. Like you've bankrupted us, we're out of money. And so the auditor's like, no, you have money, your bank accounts are here and here, look at the balance sheet, look at this. And it was intense. I can say it was very intense because it's someone it's not that he was trying to be horrible. He just didn't understand what he was looking at, and it was horrible, and he was horrible, and he went at it very aggressively, and started accusing the auditor of working for the board, and you're on their side, and it got ugly. So I think you're right though. You wait till they fizzle out a little bit, and then pick your moment to kind of come in with the facts
Yeah,
if it's
fair enough.
working.
And also the auditor's role is to listen. Like if there is someone with legitimate facts, we do want to hear about it. But not in a hot-headed situation. And then, again, it comes down when they're really angry. The facts don't come out as clear as they should be. So we need to sort of, hey, we need to communicate back and forth a bit. What do you mean by that? Or, what the case is. But and again, I think that's the sort of, a good takeaway is like, hey, you know what? Just allow for the facts to come through and then rationally assess the facts. And do we have a problem or do we not have a problem?
Right.
I think it's easy to want to put up a shield and say, you know what, this person's just hot-headed. Sometimes they may be right, and they say, okay, we got to listen to the
Yeah,
story.
fair enough. There are cases where a board doesn't spend your money well. Like that's, as managers, we're limited in what we can sort of advise. But if you're right, if they want to spend 30 grand on the front door, management can tell them, hey, we don't think that's a great way to spend your money, and your reserve fund doesn't have this much, whatever. But they really do, as they got Section 97 of the Act and everything, but they can do it. And you're right, the owners might have a valid concern. This is not a great way to spend our money. It's
Yeah.
difficult to stop a board from doing that. It
Yeah,
which
but
which kind
it's
of
something,
ties into
now
my
that you mentioned fraud, I
oh
do want to go into it. I mean, like sometimes when there is a fraud situation, it's a lot of times not the people you would expect. It's really, I've seen a case where it was an individual that very well trusted, was in the accounting side of things and would never have thought of it.
hmm,
But I think human nature has its way. Like we're instinctively want to self-preserve ourselves in many ways. So if it came to a situation where the financially, and a lot of it's like fraud definitely is a function of greed or a function of self-preservation. So either one of the two. But when it comes to the either or, people lose their sense of rationality and do things that are you would never expect them to do, and they would
yeah,
betray people in many different ways. And
yeah,
so I
and the
want to really
neighbors
put it
and
out there, like to
yeah.
managers, so you got to keep your eyes open.
Well,
Um,
that brings me to the second part of my question is
okay,
what happens when you find fraud? Like obviously you're not gonna just like there's no magic bullet you're gonna see and say, hey, they cheated. Like, okay, money might go missing out of a bank account and you don't know where it went. So you ask the question, but that's gonna be pretty rare that like, a board member gets into the bank and just takes money. Like your most common form of fraud would be like a kickback or something like that. But if you're looking at someone's books and you're just seeing red flag after red flag, what do you do? Like what's
yeah,
your
yeah. I think there's okay. So again, just want to reiterate, our role is not to find fraud, and we have to be
yeah.
skeptical of it. And when we do encounter it, we encounter it maybe in different ways. Well, either somebody told us about it, or we did our audit, we found that there's something irregular with the finances, or that, there's an invoice that looks very suspicious, or checks that have been sort of forged. Okay, all these kind of different ways. But when we do come upon it, uh, we have to investigate it, of course. Is this factual or is it not? And I think that role of investigation takes, and then we have to start, that takes a lot of effort to say, is this really fraud or is it not, or was it a mistake in accounting? Okay, so, but the next step is really we have to then communicate to those in charge with the governance, like, the board. It gets tricky if a board member is involved. I mean, I'm not to
Yeah,
say all
no,
board
for sure.
members are sometimes that happens. Board members conduct fraud as well. So you have to make sure that you're communicating to the right people, and
Mhm.
that's been another difficult task. Um, and of course, then you have to assess, well, hey, is this going to impact the audit? Is it isolated, or is it going to be overwhelming? Hey, does it totally eschew all the financial numbers? This was so like if it's so flagrant of a fraud, it misstates a whole bunch of accounts, receivables, revenues, cash, it's out to lunch. Or is it just say, you know what, the super took some, supplies and kept on taking supplies and whatever, that, what, that might be isolated. So,
Right. But
um,
if you see like, oh, this board member or former board member keeps writing off the balance that they owe, they keep not paying their fees and then writing it off or something, like I imagine you're gonna look at that and say, hey, what the hell is going
yeah,
on? Who do I talk to? Like, what do I do about this? Because it's something's clearly wrong here. And I imagine this doesn't happen a lot. Like this has to be a fraction of a percentage of what you
yeah,
see.
absolutely. I don't want to paint the picture that this happens
No,
at every
it
corporation.
again,
I
no,
think,
like
but it is interesting when it does happen, and you know what, it happens because controls are weak, and that the systems of control weren't designed to sort of oversight and all that. So I think that when there is good controls, and it minimizes this probability of this happening. But when it does happen, we do have to take certain steps of procedure to inform and do perhaps more audit work, re-examine our audit approach, and perhaps change the audit report. Is there like a reservation opinion, or we have to deny our
yeah,
opinion if it's all out to lunch? Those are the factual things. But I think the reality is I think the key is investigation and communicating to the right partners, and
yeah,
and
and much like management, you do have every right to resign from a client, to terminate a client if you feel like this is, you're seeing a lot of red flags and the people you're supposed to be reporting to aren't listening or giving you the runaround or whatever. Um, you can
yeah,
quit as an
absolutely,
auditor.
absolutely. The auditors, to withdraw from an audit is a whole different game in itself, because then it's sort of why you're withdrawing. You have to disclose the
Well, that's
reasons.
that's right. It
Yeah,
says
so if
something.
there is
It's
fraud,
not.
then it's like, okay, well, you can't just all of a sudden just walk away.
Yep.
It'd be nice to, because it's like, hey, you know what? I washed my hands of this. I don't want to do this anymore. But then once you're engaged, we're stuck with it, and we gotta deal with it. And I think that protects the industry, like rather than sort of put a blind eye and say, I can't take this anymore. What's really kind of unusual, I'm having a lot these days, is like where I'm getting proposals, and they start telling me, oh, you know what, I know there's some problems in this corporation, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, well, you know what, you're trying to engage me to do a different type of audit. I can't give you
Yeah.
a regular audit. You need to see a forensics. If you know that there's a fraud situation, you can't be engaging me as a regular auditor and say, look, give me the same, So I think they're trying to buy insurance
Well,
through.
that comes down to misconceptions. It's what's your role, right? And I think a lot of
Yeah,
people, managers, board members, maybe not, like maybe less so, but a lot of just general population, they see the auditor and they think, oh, CRA audit, like they're looking for problems, and that's not what a financial audit is necessarily. And so, yeah, I mean, your whole career, you've probably been dealing with that misconception, um,
Yeah,
on.
absolutely. I think it's a great opportunity that we were able to talk about it today. I think it does clear a lot of air, and I think that either from the management side and as well the owners, and even the board, I think that a lot of people get this all wrong. And it's, if we had to do an audit to the approach that it was forensic every single time, um, the corporation would go bankrupt just looking after
Yeah,
audit fees. It
forensic
doesn't make
audit is,
sense.
is is orders of magnitude more expensive than a regular audit. Like you're probably looking at tens of thousands of dollars at a minimum.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
That's what
it's
I've seen up there, and it's like hundreds of
right.
pages of report. It will take months just to do one, months upon months, like 6 months or 7 months just to do one year. It's a
Yeah,
different
to
beast.
recoup the 10 grand that one board member might feel was spent poorly. So it's and this is why you don't see it happen a lot. You see those reports reserved for really the most horrible cases of what's going on in our industry. But you're talking one or two, in all of Toronto or Ontario's history. You don't see this much, right? You really
Yeah,
don't see
absolutely,
the
absolutely.
forensic.
So again, we want to pull back and say, you know what, most corporations are acting appropriately. There are good controls, and again, the preventative measures are in place to help minimize this. The board oversight, there's board oversight, there's the audit, there's CMRAO as well to enhance the manager's role in terms of trying to keep things on track. So I think there's really like there's a lot of, there's a lot of checks and balances now, and I think that while it is good checks and balances in place just keep everyone should keep it a sort of one eyeball in the back of the head just in case.
I'm forced to say this almost every podcast, but like it's more entertaining to talk about the bad guys than like the 99.9% of people behaving. So like, yeah, when we talk about the fraud and that thing, like it goes without saying that the vast majority of people are doing just fine. The checks and balances are great. Things are running smoothly. Like there are problems, but it's not doom and gloom. But again, we focus on that because that's just how this podcast is. It's for entertainment.
No,
Um,
it's who doesn't like drama? Like, it's
yeah.
kind of like
But the thing is though, when you're sitting in an AGM and you see it and you see someone get really hot-headed over something and it's interesting. It warrants talking about because, the rest of the time it's fine. But we'll take this opportunity. I want to switch kind of flip pages and go into something else here. So when we do a little prep for these podcasts, when we had talked, I think you had wanted to talk a little bit about just, kind of the life of the auditor from your perspective, because you got to remember when we're on our side and we have an AGM once a year per building. So we kind of see you pop in for your 10 minutes, you do your audit report, you answer your questions, you disappear. But from your perspective, you're doing this nonstop every night, multiple per night now with since the pandemic. So tell me a little about that. Like you know, what is this from your side of the industry? What is this role and how does it work?
Yeah, I think you should have started that off with lack of life. Our lives are actually incredibly, incredibly busy, especially if you're doing a lot of condos. I think that's, I thank you for being able to highlight the auditors in a certain light. I don't think we get maybe some of the respect we deserve. I think it's like if you have a lot of condos, there's only a certain number of hours of the day and where you can have AGMs. And I think that's that window, residential 7 to 8 o'clock. It's a very
Yeah.
small window, maybe sometimes six, and so if you have commercial, maybe you're lucky, but that's a very small window to conduct the AGMs. And, at many times I'm doing maybe two or three per night, Monday to Thursday. So my nights like are just literally fried with AGMs. I'm trying to juggle like the day to sort of like how can I do one, get it out by 7:20, get into one in 7:20, get into one 7:40, try to get not too late so that they're not talking about additional matters and create more fire. Because I think a lot of managers want to get in and out quick because like I understand like a short meeting is a good meeting as long as people don't have issues. So juggling that life has been a challenge, and I think though you work with it. I think like any other, with like the other managers, uh, you flex your day. You have an opportunity to do things during the daytime when you're not having the AGMs.
Managers
And then,
managers do not get to flex our days. We just go full steam the whole way through.
oh, okay.
I
There's
got,
no,
I got
there's
a
no such.
question. I got a question about this though, because it's interesting. Like before the pandemic, you would go to a building physically, you would do your audit, and that would be your evening, right? I can't imagine you were able to do two in a night because, you might be there for an hour and a half and you have to drive and right. So it's, your auditor you'd book the auditor for that night, they'd go. If you're doing two or three of these a night now, like what happens if your 7 o'clock runs late and does 7:20 get pushed now? And then do you have clients waiting? I haven't seen this with you. That's why I'm
Yeah.
asking. Like, you're always on time, but like, what happens in that case if you do get one of those hot-headed people and they eat up your time and you got a second one booked?
Okay, so an interesting story. One time I had this AGM that couldn't get, it was in person. It couldn't get proxy because it was just, in person just is not sort of a form. It doesn't help with that. But
Yeah.
then I had a virtual, and I had it committed with the in person first, and then the virtual second. So knowing that they didn't have the proxies, I said in person, I'm going to have to put you aside, and I jumped to the virtual one and did their AGM first, and then by the time I finished,
From your car, like
yeah, I have to do it. Yeah, you know what? I can't be doing
right.
AGMs in a board like in a party
Yeah.
room if for some other
No, there's
condominium. It's not
confidential. Yeah, you can't be
confidential
leaving.
information. It's not cool. It's not professional. But the
Yeah,
best I can do is my car. It's a
right.
beautiful settings. I can hear everyone perfectly on my speakers. I've got a backlight, and I use the background so it doesn't look like I'm in my car.
There you
But
go.
I do what I can do, and I think
Mm.
managers, boards, owners appreciate that I can go to all their AGMs. Again, I try to keep consistent going to most of them, but the reality is, so that situation, I ended up going back to the in person, and they still were trying to get quorum after trying to do the virtual one. So, but yeah,
Right.
juggling is a real act. I think it's kind of not like there's ways to sort of handle it, and but there are meetings that do run longer than expected. So I give them heads up. I go, you know what? Based on that meeting last year, I don't anticipate much. Or if I know it's a long meeting, then I say, okay, you know what? I know that historically, I don't even get out till 7:45 on a 7 a.m.
Right.
to
Yeah,
7 p.m.
I guess you have notes on each one and like, that YCC 123 is just going to take you, they're a 2 hour long AGM and that there's nothing you can do about it. So you're careful with that, I suppose, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think the misconception is that we're always in and out in 15 minutes. No, it's for those corporations out there who are running smooth, and you have really harmonious situations with your owners and boards and management. Yeah, that's realistic, the 15-minute meeting.
Yeah.
There are situations where you don't even get you have proxy wars, and they don't end. That proxy war doesn't end till 7:30 or even more. And then trying to, that's and the quorum issue.
Right. They're spending half an hour sorting out quorum or not quorum and you're sitting there waiting, right? Right. I
Yeah,
guess
yeah, that
that's
happens. It happens. But yeah, my life, I try to work around it in terms of, this. I enjoy the AGMs. It's my opportunity to see the management who haven't seen it for a year, or even some of the board members. I try to paint the best picture possible. And the
I hope
best
you get like a
part in
midday, you
person.
get like a midday nap or something, I hope, because it just sounds like you're like every day would be a 9 to 5 and then a 7 to 8 kind of thing, or a 6:30 to 8:30.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. I try to time shift it, but the best part of the in person, you get the Timbits, you get the coffee. So, I think that's I try to paint the best light of it, and make it a little
Yeah,
social of it.
listen, there's something nice about the in-persons. Obviously it's harder to do just because there's more condos now than there was 10 years ago. And, if we were still doing in person, you'd have to hire staff to do it just because there's so many, like, obviously, you're doing 2 to 3 a night. Same with us with AGMs, right? Like if a company has a lot of buildings, virtual is faster. It just makes more sense versus going somewhere. But yeah, I think it's just your life sounds hard. Just to get to the bottom of it, it sounds very busy. Um, I'm glad to hear most of them go well. Like it's I would say, like you said, the majority of them are the 15 minutes, polite in and out. And that probably makes this a lot better. But yeah, take your Fridays off or something.
Oh yeah. Oh no, no. The wife gets angry if I do not spend time with her on Friday, because she knows that
Right.
it reminds me constantly, like your Monday to Thursdays
Monday
are
to
are,
Thursday.
are
Yeah, no
totally
one's allowed to do a Friday AGM. I mean, no one does a Friday AGM. If anyone does, please stop it. But yeah,
it
Monday to
it,
Thursday
it
is
happens
sweet.
on the rare. It happens, and I've had one maybe 2 days before Christmas. These
Ah, do you
yeah,
ever get
no.
someone wanting to do it on the weekend?
Yes, yes. I
Do you
had a
charge do you
condo
charge
AGM
extra
in
if
the
it's
month
like a
in
Friday night?
July
Oh,
on a Saturday. That it's like, okay.
yeah.
And
There's a ten
it's
thousand dollar angry wife fee that you add to your invoice.
I wish I could pass that on, because if you can help me buy those flowers and the jewelry and
Yeah,
the trips,
the
yeah,
chocolate
yeah,
and the flowers
yeah,
cost
we
this
could.
much.
Yeah, I think we. I think we.
Being in the penalty box for 2 days is at least 500 a day. So you just throw that onto the invoice.
If not, I'm gonna have a go auditor GoFundMe account. Okay, and I think all the
Exactly.
other
Yeah,
auditors would
I
would
love
would
it.
go for it. I'm sure they would all sign it up. We should
An
set up a
auditor
little fund.
GoFundMe page. That's great. Well, that was a very quick 30 minutes, Edmund. It was an easy conversation, so thank you for that. Anything else you want to add before we break for the day?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to help the podcast out and as well give an auditor perspective. I think, we do live normal lives as much as you think we're number crunchers. And I think we're also here to sort of support the facts and give a balanced approach when we do deliver our AGMs and do our work. So, but thank you for this. It's a much pleasurable opportunity to do the podcast.
Yeah. So just remember for those listening, be kind to your auditors, and buying a box of chocolate for their wives is definitely something you can do, especially if you hold in-person AGMs. So
Okay. Be
thank you
sure
for
to
that,
add the
Edmund.
link below for the GoFundMe. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll throw that in on the YouTube page. All right,
All right.
Edmund, thank you very much for joining us today.
All right. Take care. Bye now.